My superpower is I move energy with colour. We're not talking works of art here. We're talking let's express what is buried deep inside in a colourful and creative way. So creativity started to help me heal those wounds, and then to actually see that your deepest wound is your greatest medicine. That wound of childhood bereavement and the healing journey that I experience then allows me to bring that as medicine to the world.
Welcome to the Outlier Mindset Podcast, your guide for living a life by design. Here, we explore the journey of becoming an outlier, finding your purpose, mastering your mindset, optimizing your health, achieving financial freedom, and building a life centered around your passions. So tune in, transform, and thrive. Welcome to the Outlier Mindset. Let the journey begin. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Outlier Mindset Podcast. I am your host, Rob Schley, and today we are thrilled to welcome the always colorful Celia Barsby to the show. She's a former teacher turned creative visionary and cosmic soul guide who at 62 bravely stepped away from her full-time job to embark on a mission of self-discovery and to help others do the same. She is the author of the Amazon #1 bestseller, The Garden Party, Reawakening Your Soul's Purpose. Celia shares her journey toward finding her authentic, rebellious, and quirky self. Celia, glad to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. It's delightful to be here.
I am so excited to talk to you today. I know that we're going to talk a lot today about purpose. I know it's something that's very important to you. We talk about purpose a lot on the show, but you've got quite the story where you were at a place in your life where you weren't feeling like you were living a purpose-driven life.
Yes, absolutely. We've got helicopters going over as well, which is, because I actually like leaning into the signals and the messages that come whenever I'm talking. There's always something, and it's speaking to me about being in movement, being in transition. Let's get going. Let's move it, and let's get flying, because that's how it felt. So I was working in a college, and for the UK, that means lads that were 16 to 18. They were all engineering students. And my part of my role, alongside mothering them, and that meant, have you done your assignments, and have you got everything you need, and why haven't you done? Alongside that, there was what do you want to do with your life? What are you going to do when you leave college? And the really important thing is for you to choose something that you are so passionate about, that just lights you up, that when you get up in the morning, you go, yes, I'm going to go to work. And I started hearing myself, because we teach what we need to learn when we're teachers. And I started hearing myself, and there was this shadow of me saying, well, are we going to get to do that? Are we going to get to do the job that lights us up? Are we going to leap out of bed in the morning? And not every morning, but most mornings, it's, yes, I get to choose what I do today. And so, again, I was seeing those around me in the education system experiencing burnout. I experienced burnout. And, and what that shows up, it shows up in different ways. But for me, it was, I'd never had a day off sick, in years. And suddenly I was getting a throat infection, or I was getting a sinus infection, or, and it was one little thing after another. And I just got to the point when I said to my husband, I'm not going to resign today. And he went, okay. And I said, but I am going to resign after Christmas. My students had a big deadline for their careers at the end of the January, and I wanted to see them through to that, to make sure that they were okay. And then I left. And many people said, oh, how lovely that you're retiring. No, I'm not retiring. I am now going to live an authentic life that felt in alignment with what I wanted to do. That, and many of the students, said to me, "You're always telling us to do the thing that you really want to do, that we can do that." And they were thrilled and excited for me that I was getting to do that.
And so you were actually to the point where it was making you physically ill, because you weren't aligned with what you thought you should be doing.
Yeah, sure. And I think we we seem to somehow accept that it's okay to be, oh, you've got to have a day off sick. And you go, well, that only happens when we are not when our whole body is out of alignment with, I talk about, sort of mind, body, spirit, our emotional needs, our mental needs. And if there's something adrift, our body will let us know, often in not very subtle ways.
Yeah.
I think, it's interesting how often it's our throat. If we are not speaking our truth, if we're not saying what we want, we don't feel safe to speak our truth. Then often it affects our throat chakra, our throat energy center. And sometimes you go, well, I just, I've got an upset tummy, I feel really sick. And you go, well, what is your gut telling you? Because our body, as I say, it uses very easy for us to understand language, but we often ignore it.
So you're getting up every day and you're really working with purpose with your students, telling them to live this authentic life and go out and do these things, but you don't have
Yeah.
it for yourself. And you're suffering because of that, to the point of, okay, I got to change, right? And I'm sure that there's so many rewards on teaching children, but what was your purpose? What did you want in your life? Because I know how much it hurts when you're not doing the things that you really want to be doing.
Sure. So for me, I recognized that the experiences I had had in life of, and we all have, the things that we have done, but the experiences I'd had and how I had come to terms with childhood bereavement, which is I now can see as trauma. I For years that was not understood. I was only 10, we're going back a few years. And that, childhood bereavement, it was, well, you didn't get there was no such thing as counseling or anything like that. So I learned to use tools for my own healing journey. And as the time went on, I went, right, I want to share those tools, that information, the lessons I've learned to help other people, specifically women. I feel drawn to women because that is my experience. But interestingly, I'm connecting more and more with men who have had, similar experiences, who again weren't listened to, or who didn't feel safe um, as children. So that's quite an interesting one.
So what did you have to do when you were going through the process? Because we all go through that. We go through those struggles, or we're thinking that we're not aligned. Sometimes we are, sometimes we're not. But what did you do? What was your process? What did you go through to make that change, to break out of that pattern, if you will, that you'd been in for so many years?
Yeah. So for me, it is creative. Creativity is where I turn to. I experienced did so as I've just backtracked slightly. So I experienced childhood bereavement when I was 10. My dad died very, very suddenly. Um, and what happened was I took on a number of filters. This is how I now see my life. The people you love will leave you, because I lost my nana as well within a very short time. It's all your fault. It's my responsibility because I was an only child. And I had to keep quiet. Don't upset your mom. Now, very understandable, you might say. But what happened was, as I went through my teenage years, I found it very difficult to connect um, through relationship because I was seeing the filter, the people you love will leave you. So why would you get close to anybody? Because they're going to leave you. it's all my fault. It's all my responsibility. So I just made sure that everybody else was happy and it didn't matter how I felt. Now, what happened was eventually, when I hit the grand age of 40, I had what the world called a breakdown, and I call now a breakthrough, because I began to see that those filters that I was living my life by weren't serving me. And this is where you start to feel into your purpose. What is going to light you up may not be how you've been living your life up to now. I discovered creativity. I discovered that actually all of the times that I was told at school that I wasn't creative wasn't true. I found through creativity, I had the opportunity to heal wounds. I now can see that what I do, my superpower is I move energy with color. So if I am feeling, even if I'm feeling, gosh, what on earth am I feeling? I can go and get out a sketchbook and scribble. We're not talking works of art here. We're talking, let's express what is buried deep inside in a colourful and creative way. So creativity started to help me heal those wounds, and then to actually see that, as my phrase that I like to use, is that your deepest wound is your greatest medicine. That wound of childhood bereavement and the healing journey that I experienced then allows me to bring that as medicine to the world.
And so did you go through that whole process, like when you were getting to your end of, I want to go change and be different? Did you start that process leading up to that? And then you started to discover yourself? Or do you think that that journey started after you really said, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to move in this direction?
Definitely. You get to that point, and it's not that you can say, oh, I don't like this, so I'm going to, I have this vision of the perfect life. It's just you get to the point, I got to the point of saying, I can't do this anymore. This is making me sick. This is making me ill. And that is not the person that I believe I was designed to be. I wasn't living the word is authentic, it's aligned. When we get to that point, you go, no, enough. Now, what happened for me was that meant I then experienced divorce, because I wasn't the person that I had been 25 years earlier. So we then have another wound that we get to work through in this lifetime. And we move through that using more tools, because as we go through, I used to say to the students, it's a bit like a computer game. You go through life and you make sure you're picking up the things you need. You don't know why you need them at the time, but you go, oh yes, I now have that as a tool that I can use.
Yeah. Well, so many people live like that. I mean, they just work through the sickness. They go to work and they're not aligned, and it's a tough thing to break out of. And sometimes people never get a chance to even break out of it. They spend their lives in it. But at least when you went through the process, at least you were able to identify it, number one. And number two, even just identifying that, hey, this is making me sick. This is taking my body and it's making me so I can't function like I should be functioning. At least you had that foresight and you were able to get through that to get to the other side of the equation, being authentic, fulfilled, living with purpose.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, picking up something you said there, I think it's that growing awareness of something has to change. Something, I can't go on like this. I use journaling. I write most mornings. I use the process of Morning Pages by Julia Cameron, and I began to notice what I was writing. I just can't go on like this. Something has to change. And that requires great courage. It also meant and it was interesting, as soon as I said, enough. I can't do this anymore. Something's got to change. Then people came into my life who were able to support me through that change and help me create my website, encourage me to write my book and write my story. And when I left the college, that was not on my radar at all. If somebody had said to me in that November time, when I was thinking, oh, what on earth am I going to do? Oh, well, you're going to write a book. I know. The universe works with us, but we get to go first.
So you tell me a little bit about your book. I read through a little bit of it. I want to hear a little bit more about your philosophies there.
Okay, thank you. So my book likes to hide, so it's lurking here on the table. So the Garden Party, Reawakening to Your Soul's Purpose, is my story. So I take you through my journey, but at each stage, I invite you to reflect on your own journey, because my experience of childhood will be very different from yours and from probably all my readers, but there will be something in your childhood that you want to celebrate and that you want to reflect on. I talk about, I lived quite an idyllic childhood until that point when my dad died. So I invite you, as you travel with me on my journey, to reflect on your own. And then my philosophy, the medicine of Garden Party, comes and just leaning in, so it wants to be shared. My parents married quite late in life, and my dad brought my mum a gold charm bracelet when they got married. And each year he bought her a charm which reflected and represented their year. And as I was writing my book, I had a real sense that the charm bracelet wanted to be part of the story. And that has become the medicine. So each year, and there are 15 golden charms, they create the structure of how we move through life. I always know when it's the right time to share where the origin of the story comes from, because I get chills going up and down my spine, which is what's happening right now, as I share their love story, because it is, it's a beautiful love story of times that were full of plenty and joy. And I talk about being drunk on life and abundance and everything's going brilliantly. And then there are times when it feels like they've gone through the mill, when they experience bereavement. So it's a beautiful metaphor for how we move through life. And each of those charms creates, I call them magical keys through to the garden.
Very good. No, I love that. There's a billion different ways to locate purpose, a lot of different processes. Everybody has a different way of doing things. It's always fascinating to me because at the end of the day, it's all about getting to that one place, getting to authenticity, getting to purpose. A lot of different paths can be taken. A lot of different ways can be achieved to get there. But it's fascinating to hear the different stories. It sounds like your story and all the different stories that I hear every single day, they're very personal. There's always a reason behind it, something that somebody, like you said, maybe it's a trauma, or maybe it's a pain, or maybe it's a challenge, or maybe it's, like you said, getting sick, a lot of different reasons. But at the end of the day, ultimately getting there is the most important thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's right. When we speak from the heart, when we allow our head to get out of the way and we go, what wants to be said? What do I need to hear? When I start listening with my heart and speaking with my heart and following my heart, that's where the word courage comes from. This journey requires courage. And you go, oh, and there's a sort of a traditional, oh, I've got to be really courageous. And, I can see a woman going into battle or a man going into battle. And you go, well, actually, courage is follow your heart. It's much softer, gentler energy. And when we do that, and we are, I talk about being my authentic, rebellious, slightly quirky self, that's living my purpose. That's, is everything I do aligned with that?
Well, and when you align those things too, that is when the world opens up to you, right? When you're not aligned, when you're not authentic, when you're really getting up and just pressing through the days and the hours and the minutes, that's when the world kind of closes itself. But when you go out there, you identify, you align yourself with authenticity and purpose. All of a sudden, all those things start coming into your life. All those people start coming into your life to lift up what you are doing because you're so well aligned.
Yeah. I love that you're talking with your hands, which is what I said. And for those of you that are just listening, as we're talking about this, there's this, if you're not living in aligned purpose, there's this constriction energy. And as soon as you are, there's this expansion energy. And, that's what our bodies want to do. As we sort of say, the world opens up for you, rather than us, getting shrinking down and curling up in a ball.
Yeah, no, and I just think in expression, I'm that guy. I always talk with my hands, and I it's almost a little bit annoying to me at times where I'm like, oh my gosh, there my hands go again. But I don't know. It's just kind of like it is opening up to life. It's just coming up and saying, putting your stuff into the world and then bringing that energy back into your body and into your soul. I'm just curious because you've probably taught just thousands of kids over your days. Do you get to touch some of these kids again? Do they come back and tell about their authentic journeys to you?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Nobody's ever asked me that. And in recent years, not so much. But there is a young lady. Well, she'll always be a young lady to me. In my very first teaching job, when I was very young, very naive, thought I could change the world. Well, maybe I did for this girl. I was a maths teacher, so that tells you quite a lot. So I was a maths teacher at this school, and there was a little group that had been created because it was at all girls school, and these girls had basically at the age of 14 been told they were so rubbish at maths they created an extra group for them because they couldn't keep up with the others. So you can imagine the well-being of these beautiful teenagers who had been told my first lesson. I still recall it. I'm just there in the room. We're no good at maths. We're no good at maths, miss. We can't do it, and we're all really stupid. And I thought, no, you're not. You're lovely. You're beautiful, beautiful young women. And okay, there's here comes the rebel. Well, let's prove everybody wrong because I don't believe that. And I worked with this little group in my own way. And I said to the head of department, well, I'm not going to teach them that because, there's no point because I've got to take them back. And there's an analogy of life. Sometimes we get to go back and go, where did it go wrong? Where did it go adrift? Because somewhere along their maths journey, they've gone down the wrong path. So, right, let's retrace our steps. Let's go back to the beginning and let's go from there, which I did. And I'm trying to think how many years ago. So we're getting on for 40 years. One of those girls still sends me a Christmas card every year, never missed. And she says, I changed her life because although she didn't want to be a mathematician, she was a brilliant musician. And the college she wanted to go to study music required her to have what we in those days were called an O level. So the exam she took at 16, they went, we need you to have your maths. And she passed it so she could go and pursue her music career in the college that she wanted to go to. So I haven't told that story for years. Isn't that interesting? I love that when something rises and you go, oh, what, because the piece, why did I want to share that? There's something about the backtracking and looping. That's a very wolfish energy that we go, hang on, I need to go look at this from a different direction, from a different perspective. And then when I've backtracked, then I can move forward.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think a lot too about children. I think a lot about my own childhood. I think about how kids, they're kind of raised not to be different. They go to school. They're taught to be like everybody else. They're taught to dress like everybody else, sit like everybody else, study like everybody else. You're compared with one another all the time. Individuality isn't necessarily something that comes out a lot when you're talking about, our kids. They're taught to listen to their adults. They're taught to listen to their teachers. They're taught to not question things. And then we wonder why, when they get out of college or they get out of school, that they are stuck kind of in patterns, or they're afraid to be themselves, or they're afraid to go out and do something different. And I think it has a lot to do with how we're brought up, particularly in our schools and in our homes.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, that's something that I have that has come as I've done my own work, my own inner work, is at the age of 10, and we're going back to 1970. So the norm in schools is that you had there were two parents, it was sort of very much that sort of family. And suddenly I was not normal because I didn't have a dad. And it saddens me a little bit that nowadays probably child who's living with two parents and that's their family, that would they would be in the minority. I was in the minority. I remember feeling incredibly jealous, even though I didn't recognize that was the emotion, but I was incredibly jealous when parents came to the school, to open days and parents days, because it was just my mom, that I didn't have two parents. And so there's that filter piece. And I think what for me, what happened was I overcompensated. I was different. I wasn't the same as all of the others because I didn't have two parents. I was on my own with my mum. And so I then did everything I could fit in. So I went to school, I went to university, I got the best grades I could. I got married and I had children, and it was in that order. And I did everything that I could to try and fit in. And as I say, I think um, eventually, if you are not living an authentic life, I certainly didn't allow my rebellious side to come in for years, and then eventually it all cracks, and you have the breakthrough, and you deconstruct. I think that's where that backtracking. Sometimes we have to break if we want to create something new, and it's more beautiful.
Yeah, and I've got two beautiful daughters. One's getting ready to go off to university or off to college, and it's so hard for me because I want her to make the decisions. I want her to go to that place that makes her happy. I want her to go and experience what she wants to experience, what she wants to study, what she wants to do. But then again, I also find myself having opinions at times, right? So for me, it's kind of like, okay, how can I balance these two? Or how can I just simply be quiet and just ask the right questions? I think a lot of adults, or a lot of people, want to tell people what to do, or tell them how to do something, or tell them how to be something, instead of just asking the questions to let them figure out what they want to do, what they want to be, how they want to do things.
Yeah. Yes, I think that's right. It's the questions, not well, you should do this. I well remember my son coming to me saying to me, "Do I have to go to university?" And I went, "No, not if you don't want to." But the school he was in, that was well, this is what you're going to do. You're going to do it like that. And he wanted to be different. He didn't want to do that. And I with the garden party, I use a lot of analogies of the garden, and we've got our own path, and we get to find our own path. And if we walk down somebody else's path, eventually you go, "Oh, I'm completely lost here. I've got to go back. Let me go back and find my own."
By the way, you would love my property. My wife has a flower farm. So we live on a 3-acre flower farm, and her whole entire life is about gardening analogies. It doesn't matter what it is. It always comes back to the garden for her. And I love
Yeah,
that
yeah,
because there's so many good analogies in the garden that you can really take and integrate into your own life. From everything from the roots to how you plant, to cultivating soil, to rain, to watering, to feed. I mean, life is just a big garden, right?
Yeah. And you rest, gardens rest. We don't expect our garden to flower all year long, 24/7, 12 months of the year. And then suddenly we wonder why we need to rest and why we go, no, I'm not doing anything. I'm chilling. I'm gonna be a seed in the ground.
Now she talks about that all the time about, the seasons, the change of the seasons and how people have those changes in their seasons too. Sometimes you're blossoming, but sometimes you also do need to put the garden to bed and reflect and go inside. When it's the same thing with the solaces, when you're talking about when we get into the dark season, we've got our light season when we're out and then we put things to bed and then we come into the darkness and reflect and think and plan and get ready for that next season.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, when we talk about living an aligned life, more and more in business, I am seeing how that is important as well. That it's not on all the time, because then you're going to get burnt out in business. So it is, how do I align my business with the seasons, with the flow of what I am doing, what I am here to cause and create, but in alignment. I'm not fighting against, um, where's my words? I'm not fighting against what I want to do, what I want to bring to the world, when actually what my body is telling me to do is to rest. I know that I'm a certified moonologer as well, so I look at the moon cycles of what is the cycle of the moon on a monthly basis. And I know there are 2 or 3 days in the year when the moon is in the darkest part of my chart. When I want to reflect, I want to go inwards. Those are not the days when I would be agreeing to do a podcast or a summit. I block them out of my calendar and I go, no, those are times when I get to just reflect and be still. But I'm lucky that I can do that because I'm an entrepreneur. I've got my own business. I can choose when I work and where I work. So there's, the exciting next stage is that we're actually in the process of selling our house, and we're moving into a motorhome. An RV is what you would understand.
You're going to travel around
Yeah.
or are you going to stay put? You're going to travel.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep. We're
fantastic.
going to travel. And I look at my business and my husband's business. And we went, yeah, we can both work from while traveling. And so that in itself has challenges. You start to go, well, what is really important? What am I taking with me? And what am I releasing? What do I not need anymore? So
Yeah.
it's an interesting journey.
Well, and a lot of entrepreneurs, I always talk about life by design, building that life that you want to be living. And, sometimes, and there's nothing wrong. A lot of entrepreneurs build life by design. It's kind of like, I like doing this. I'm going to build a business around that. But it doesn't mean your purpose can't come from, like my dad was a lifelong educator. So, he started as an elementary teacher, and then he ended up as superintendent of schools at one point in his career. But it was his purpose. He really was aligned with his purpose and his passion. And that was great. He built that life by design. But most of the time, it's an entrepreneur who says, you know what? I want to go on the road. I want to live here. I don't want to have to get up and go 5 days a week to a place. I want to go and I want to work from Costa Rica. I want to go work from Hawaii. I mean, to have a life by design and build what you want to be building, a lot of times that comes with the entrepreneurship or owning the business.
And just giving yourself permission to say, well, I don't want to do it like that anymore. I think the pandemic allowed more people to say, oh, I can do things differently. Even those that are, still working and in a paid job are no longer going into the office that they used to go into, and they're working from home and they have that flexibility. But yes, it's exciting to say, and I guess it appeals. That's where the quirky comes in. You know, you go, oh, yeah, this is where am I going to be teaching from? Because I still view myself as a teacher, an educator. Maybe that's the grown-up word. Maybe I'm maybe I'm ready to move into being an educator.
Well, I think you're still a teacher. You're still an educator. Any way you want to put that. You're just doing it from a different platform, a different way of doing it. You're doing it on your own terms. Still putting into the world, still getting good results, still showing people incredible things, but you're doing it on your terms. Life opens itself up kind of when you're ready for it and when life's ready for it, right?
Yes,
It's just like
yeah.
when you opened yourself up and you said, "Here I am," and then all the right people came into play.
And we're still experiencing that. It's the divine timing, the right time. Um, and I often say to myself, what am I learning today? And just recently it's patience, lighten up, and really, when we get sometimes I think with when we I think I used to be driven by my purpose. Now I see my purpose. My purpose now fuels what I do rather than driving me. There's a different energy around that.
And what would you tell people who are sitting there, they're doing maybe what they're not aligned to do. They're not authentically living the life that they want to be living. They don't quite understand maybe what their purpose is. They're feeling handcuffed. They're feeling frustrated. They want to break free. They just don't know where to start. Where would you point somebody like that?
Well, other than me, initially I think you the first step is recognizing that you want something different. And as we are very creative humans, we are blessed and given creativity is in our soul, is to start saying, well, what would you like your life to look like? I know when I was 18, 19, I wanted a life where I got married and I had children and I knew the sort of house I wanted to live in. And I created that life. I said, this is what I want and this is where I want to live. And that happened. And I think reflecting on that, when, just look back at your life and say, where in my life because wherever you are now, you created it. And sometimes that can be very uncomfortable to say, oh yeah, I created this. This is where, this is by following this path, this is where I am. So we take responsibility and say, I don't want to be here anymore. You give yourself permission to say, well, what do you want? What would you like? What would you just imagine your dream life? What would you like that to look like? And then really spend time in, I, I hesitate to use the word meditation because that can really put people off. Some people go, oh, I don't know what that is. I don't know how to do it. So spend time with yourself because you know how to get through your life. So spend time with you, however that looks, whether it's going for a walk, whether it's going for a swim, whether it's going for a run, whether it's standing in the shower, and just allow that inner wisdom to sort of bubble up, and you'll have a wild and wacky idea like I did. And I said to my husband, I knew I had to resign. And I knew the right time. I think that's key. Um, and just be open to what the universe wants for you.
Well, I know a lot of people talk about just unless you can sit and really just be quiet at times, it's hard to take on any new information or to really have things come to you. When you're in, you can call it meditation, you can call it just a quiet space. It could be that walk that you take where you're just toning everything else out and taking that walk to give that space, to give that room in your life, in your body, in your mind to receive that message or to receive that piece of information that could change your entire trajectory.
Here's the other thing is I had this idea that I would be able to do both. I would be able to have my secure, well-paid job and develop a business. And it became really clear to me that you can't just cram something else in. You have to create the space first. So you create the space, you create the stillness, and that's when you can receive the ideas. And of course, that sometimes means that we let go of the security, we let go and go, you are safe. The universe has your best interest, your higher self has your best interests at heart. And, that opportunity to create the space and be still enough, because, gosh, we've just rushed from one thing to the next. Whenever I do an interview like this, I blank out at least an hour before and after any interview because I need that space. I need space to get ready and to, come fully present. And then I need the space afterwards just to allow that energy to reset. But it's not something we teach at school. We're not taught to do that.
No, and a lot of people can't do it. I mean, it's really tough. It's tough for me to do it, especially with busy people. But if you don't carve it out, it just costs you so much by not doing it.
Yes. Yes. I love that word. It costs. There is a cost if you just try and keep going. Yeah, you'll pay for it.
Well, Celia, this has been a great conversation this morning. I want people, number one, before we get off the podcast, I want people to know where they can go find you. I love the fact that you got this beautiful book that could really help and inspire people. How can people find you? Where should they go?
Okay, so the place to go, two places. Come and find me on Facebook. It's Celia Barsby. You can look for Soul Garden Party as well. That will find me. I'm on YouTube as well, and my book is on Amazon. So you can look up the Garden Party on Amazon as well.
I love it. And then we always end the show. This is always kind of interesting to me because everybody's got a different take on this. But I'm always interested to know if you could go back into time and you could sit down with your younger self. Wow, that'd be great if we could, right? But if you could just give yourself one piece of advice, just one, what would be the most valuable piece of advice that you feel like you could give to your younger self?
My advice would be you are safe to be yourself. You're safe to be you. You have that permission, and you don't have to live your life according to anybody else's rules.
Amen to that. It is your one shot. And, it's a tragedy when you're not living a life that's authentic to who you are.
Yeah.
Celia, thank you for being on today. I really appreciate you. And hopefully we can get you on here again another time.
Thank you. It's been lovely talking to you. I've loved our conversation. It's been really cool.